Welcome, dear listeners, to a journey through the Victorian era. When you decide to take a moment of peace and quiet, I invite you to share in the comments where in the world you are listening and what time of day it is. I always love to see how our community of night owls has expanded. If you enjoy diving into the rich tapestry of history for your own entertainment, subscribe to our newsletter for more calming stories like this. I awaken each morning to the faint chiming of bells carried on the cold London air. They are distant, softened by the fog that clings to the rooftops like a shawl. But even muted, they remind me of the order in which we must live. It is, after all, the year 1851, and I am a daughter of this great city at the very height of its strictest rules. The first light of day is never sharp here. It drifts gently through tall windows veiled in lace, filtered by coal smoke that never entirely departs. I rise quietly, mindful of the silence expected in a respectable home before the household servants begin their duties. My shoes touch the floor with the lightest sound, for a lady must move as though gliding rather than walking. These are the small disciplines impressed upon me since childhood, as much a part of my being as my breath. I pause at the mirror. The glass is faintly spotted, but my reflection stares back with a seriousness far older than my years. A lady must be composed from the moment she is seen, even in her own chamber. I draw the brush through my hair slowly, the bristles whispering like autumn reeds. Each stroke is steady, measured, as my governess once taught me. 100 strokes to ensure discipline, beauty, and patience. From the street below comes the rumble of wheels upon cobblestones. The carriages begin their restless circuit long before most of us step beyond the threshold. London never sleeps entirely, for the poor must labor while the wealthy may slumber. I sometimes wonder about them. The flower sellers in the chill, the sweeps with their sooted faces, the children with bare feet upon the frost. Yet such thoughts must be kept soft, secret, for society prefers its young ladies to smile and keep to their embroidery. I dress in silence. My maid, Clara, enters with lowered eyes, her voice hushed. She tightens the laces of my corset until my breath is drawn shallow. It is not discomfort that troubles me most, but the reminder that every part of me is bound, my body, my words, my very thoughts, by invisible laces woven of expectation. Still I submit, for submission is the currency of respectability. The gown is of pale blue silk today, chosen by my mother for its modest charm. High neckline, long sleeves, skirt brushed just so. To appear less would be to invite whispers. To appear more would be vanity. A lady's appearance is not her own, but the mirror in which her family is judged. When I descend to breakfast, the house is still. The hall smells faintly of polish and coal fire. Paintings of ancestors, stern and unsmiling, watch me with eyes that seem to enforce the rules of our age even more than my parents do. In the dining room, my father rustles his newspaper. My mother sips her tea with the gentlest clink of china. We do not speak immediately, for conversation at table must wait until all are served. At last, the quiet is broken by the scrape of a chair. My father clears his throat, a sound that carries authority, as though it were part of the empire itself. He speaks of Parliament, of commerce, of the new Crystal Palace being erected for the great exhibition. I listen, nodding at intervals, though I am not asked for my opinion. My role is to learn the art of attentiveness, to smile softly, to speak when addressed, and never with too much certainty. London, he says, is becoming the center of the world. Ships arrive from distant colonies, heavy with tea, spices, cotton. Our railways spread like veins across the land, carrying both wealth and worry. My mother sighs at the mention of change. She prefers that which is constant. Manners, marriage, the careful choreography of drawing rooms. When breakfast concludes, I step into the world beyond the heavy doors of our house. The fog embraces me instantly, damp and cool. A handsome cab rattles past, its driver hunched beneath a dripping hat. Street lamps stand like guardians, though their flames are pale in daylight. And there it is, London. Endless, immense, breathing with millions of souls, each bound by the same unwritten code of how one must appear, how one must behave. Ladies walk with parasols tilted just so, skirts lifted a mere inch to avoid the filth of the street. Gentlemen raise their hats bowing slightly, each gesture a thread in the vast fabric of etiquette. I take a step forward, and the cobblestones echo softly beneath my shoes. In that moment, I feel both the weight and the wonder of my world. It is beautiful in its order, yet suffocating in its rules. And as I walk deeper into the mist of London, I invite you to come with me, to see, to hear, to feel what it is to live within the strict embrace of Victorian society. For this is my story, whispered gently, so that you may drift into it as one drifts into a dream. The fog thickens as I move further into the city, curling in soft spirals around lampposts and clinging to the hems of skirts. London in the year 1851 feels less like a city and more like a living creature, breathing, shifting, heavy with both promise and despair. I hold my gloved hands together, for a lady must never allow her fingers to wander idly in public. Even in something as simple as a walk, propriety must be carefully maintained. The hansom cabs rattle over the stones, their wheels slick with mud. I catch glimpses of faces pressed against the glass, gentlemen hurrying to the exchange, ladies shielded with veils, children riding stiffly beside governesses. At the curbs, flower girls call in sweet sing-song voices, their hands red with cold, offering small bunches of violets to passers-by. Their shawls are thin, their cheeks hollow, and I feel a tug of pity that I dare not voice. For if I should speak too kindly to a stranger, especially one so poor, it would raise an eyebrow in polite society. Compassion, though admirable in sermons, is often considered unseemly in practice. I hear the cries of the newsboys, their high voices breaking through the fog. Great exhibition preparations, wonders from every corner of the globe. They dart between carriages with papers tucked under their arms, their boots worn to the sole. One boy, no older than 10, brushes past me, his eyes startlingly bright beneath his soot-streaked brow. For an instant I imagine his world, the endless running, the cold mornings, the hunger, and then he is gone, swept into the river of the crowd. My governess used to say that London is a tapestry. The wealthy form the bright threads upon the surface, while the poor weave the dark strands beneath, unseen but holding the whole together. To walk these streets is to glimpse both sides at once. I turn into Regent Street, where the fog begins to lift slightly and the grand shop fronts gleam with polished glass. Inside, mannequins stand adorned with gowns imported from Paris, their silk shimmering faintly in the lamplight. Ladies pause here, their hands resting lightly on the crook of their escort's arms, admiring the latest fashions while pretending indifference. It is a game we all must play. Desire hidden beneath restraint, eagerness concealed by the calm mask of decorum. A gentleman approaches from the opposite direction. I lower my gaze ever so slightly, the proper measure of acknowledgement. He lifts his hat in return, bowing with precision. The entire exchange lasts no more than a heartbeat, yet it carries the full weight of Victorian etiquette, measured, restrained, perfectly rehearsed. To stumble in such moments is to invite gossip, and gossip is a shadow one never escapes. By midday, I arrive at the home of Mrs. Whitcomb, a family friend whose drawing-room gatherings are considered essential for a young lady's social standing. The butler greets me with solemn formality, taking my card upon a silver tray before permitting me inside. Such rituals may seem excessive, but they are the scaffolding upon which our society is built. The drawing room is bright with gaslight, despite the hour. Heavy curtains shut out the grey of London, replacing it with a world of velvet gilt frames and perfumed air. Ladies sit in careful clusters upon settees, their laughter no louder than a murmur. Gentlemen stand with hands clasped behind their backs, discussing politics and trade in low tones. I curtsy to Mrs. Whitcomb, who receives me with a smile that is equal parts warmth and calculation. Every guest here is measured, weighed upon the scale of wealth, lineage, and propriety. To enter this room is to step into a theatre where every gesture is a performance. We speak of the great exhibition soon to open in Hyde Park. There is talk of the Crystal Palace itself, an immense structure of glass and iron that seems more dream than reality. Some say it is the triumph of modern industry, proof that Britain stands unrivaled among nations. Others whisper that it is vulgar, too modern, too brazen a display of power. I listen, offering polite nods, careful not to voice an opinion too firmly. A lady must float upon the current of conversation, never pushing too hard, never resisting too openly. One young woman, Miss Albright, leans close to me with a conspiratorial air. She whispers of her cousin, a railway engineer, who claims that trains will soon connect even the remotest villages to London. Imagine, she breathes, a world where no place is distant, no town forgotten. Her eyes shine with quiet excitement, but her mother, seated nearby, frowns ever so slightly. Enthusiasm, especially from a young lady, must be tempered lest it seem unrefined. We sip our tea from delicate porcelain cups, the clink of china almost musical. The air is warm, fragrant with roses, yet beneath the softness lies the sharp edge of scrutiny. Every gown, every gesture, every word is silently judged. It is not unkindness exactly, but a vigilance that ensures society remains intact. One misstep, a laugh too loud, a glance too bold, and one might find oneself whispered about in parlors across the city. As the afternoon wanes, a maid enters to replenish the tea. She moves silently, almost invisibly, her eyes lowered. The guests barely acknowledge her, yet I cannot help but watch. Her hands are red from labor, her apron spotless despite the work. She is no older than I, yet her life is entirely different, shaped not by etiquette but by endurance. I wonder if she ever dreams of silk gowns, of strolls in Regent Street, of voices speaking her name with respect. When the gathering concludes, I make my farewells with practiced grace. The butler opens the door, and the city greets me once more with its damp breath. The fog has lifted slightly, revealing the spires of churches and the distant outline of St. Paul's. Carriages stream past, wheels splashing through puddles. Children dart between them with baskets of matches, their cries sharp against the hum of London life. I pause for a moment on the step, breathing in the mingled scents of coal, damp stone, and horsehair. This is my world, a city bound by rules, divided by class, yet alive with energy. To live here is to walk upon a narrow path, each step measured, each glance weighed. Yet within me stirs a quiet longing to know more than what is permitted, to see beyond the veil of propriety. The bells of St. Martin in the Fields begin to toll, their sound soft and solemn through the evening air. I draw my shawl closer and begin the walk home, my thoughts drifting between duty and desire, between the life I must live and the world that whispers just beyond reach. And so the day closes, not with haste, but with the steady rhythm of London itself, immense, ordered, yet forever pulsing with hidden stories waiting to be told. The morning dawns with a light unlike any other, soft and golden, as though London itself is holding its breath. Word has spread through every drawing room, every shop, every cobbled lane. The great exhibition opens its doors. I have dreamt of this day for months, ever since the newspapers first carried sketches of the Crystal Palace, that vast structure of glass and iron rising in Hyde Park. My mother insists that the occasion demands particular care in dress. Clara, my maid, begins her work earlier than usual, lacing my corset with steady hands, smoothing the folds of my gown. Today I wear pale cream muslin adorned with delicate embroidery, modest but elegant, chosen to reflect the dignity of the event. My bonnet is trimmed with silk ribbon, its brim lowered just enough to shield my eyes without hiding my face. In every detail, restraint is the rule. A lady must appear neither too bold nor too plain, neither too eager nor too indifferent. As we step into the carriage, the city already stirs with excitement. Carriages rattle in long lines toward Hyde Park, their horses tossing their manes, their brass fittings gleaming in the pale light. Pedestrians throng the pavements, some in their Sunday best, others in worn coats and patched shawls. For today, it seems, all of London wishes to catch a glimpse of the wonder. The closer we draw to the park, the more the air seems to change. The trees stand tall and solemn, their branches just touched with spring. And then, suddenly, it rises before us, the Crystal Palace. I cannot help the soft breath that escapes me. It is unlike anything I have ever seen. Vast and shimmering, the glass walls stretch upward like the ribs of some colossal cathedral, but lighter, brighter, almost ethereal. The morning sun pours through the panes, casting shifting patterns of gold upon the lawns. It seems less a building than a dream made solid, a vision of the future itself. Our carriage halts, and we join the stream of visitors ascending the steps. Gentlemen adjust their gloves, ladies smooth their skirts, children clutch their parents' hands in wide-eyed wonder. The hum of voices blends with the clatter of hooves, the call of vendors, the distant strains of a military band. Inside, the air is bright and warm, filled with the mingled scent of polished wood, fresh flowers, and machine oil. The glass above us forms a roof so high it seems to touch the sky itself. Sunlight floods the hall, catching upon banners, gilded frames, and the gleam of polished steel. We move slowly, for the crowds are immense. To my left, I see great engines displayed, their wheels turning with measured power. Gentlemen lean close, speaking of pistons and pressure, of inventions that promise to transform industry. To my right, cases glitter with jewels, silks, and rare woods brought from India, Africa, and the West Indies. Treasures of the empire, arranged to dazzle the eye and stir the heart with pride. I pause before a display of fine porcelain, its surfaces painted with scenes of distant lands. A gentleman nearby explains to his companion that these are from China, brought across oceans to rest now beneath the roof of London. His voice is hushed, reverent, as though he speaks in a temple. And perhaps, in a way, he does. For the Crystal Palace feels like a shrine to progress, to power, to all that Britain believes itself to be. Yet even as I marvel, I feel the tug of unease. These wonders, though beautiful, come at a price I cannot fully name. The jewels sparkle, but I think of the miners who pried them from the earth. The cotton gleams, but I imagine the countless hands that wove it in sweat and heat far from this hall of glass. Such thoughts are not voiced, of course. To speak them here would be as improper as raising one's voice in church. My mother's hand rests lightly upon my arm, guiding me forward. We pass beneath a great archway adorned with flags of many nations. The band plays softly in the distance, a hymn of triumph that seems to lift the very air. Everywhere faces glow with awe, children pointing, ladies whispering, gentlemen nodding with grave approval. We pause again before a display of intricate clocks, their faces shining like suns, their mechanisms ticking in perfect harmony. One small golden watch, no larger than a locket, catches my eye. Its hands move with delicate precision, measuring each second as if it were a treasure. I think of my own life, measured so carefully by rules and expectations. Time, too, binds me just as tightly as the laces of my corset. A murmur spreads through the crowd, and we turn to see Prince Albert himself, moving solemnly among the exhibits. His presence commands quiet respect, though he walks not with grandeur, but with calm dignity. It was his vision, they say, that gave birth to this great palace of glass. The visitors bow their heads slightly as he passes, a ripple of deference flowing like water. As the afternoon sun begins to tilt, the light within the Crystal Palace changes. Beams of gold slant through the glass, painting the marble floors with shifting patterns. The air grows warmer, the voices softer, as though all have settled into the rhythm of wonder. I find a seat upon a wooden bench, resting my gloved hands in my lap. Around me, the world hums with invention, with ambition, with the pulse of an empire at its height. And yet, in the quiet of my own heart, I feel something deeper, a sense of standing at the edge of two worlds. One is the old world of restraint, of rules and rigid propriety. The other is the world promised by these machines, these wonders, this palace of glass, a world that may yet loosen the chains of custom, that may one day allow us to breathe more freely. For now, though, I sit in silence, listening to the ticking of the clocks, the murmur of the crowd, the soft strains of music drifting through the glass cathedral, and I think, this is London, this is our age, a place of marvel and of mystery, of beauty and of burden, all bound together beneath the shining vault of the Victorian sky. By the time we return from Hyde Park, the day has already begun its slow descent into dusk. London's light fades quickly, as though the fog swallows the sun whole. Lamps are lit in the streets, their flames flickering like small stars, guiding the carriages homeward. Within our house, the air is warmer, quieter, the scent of beeswax polish mingling with the faint tang of coal from the grates. Servants move with soft efficiency, carrying wood for the fire, arranging silver on the long dining table, placing candles in their brass holders so that when struck, they will gleam against the crystal glassware. It is not only a meal we prepare for, it is a ceremony, one that must be conducted with the utmost precision. Clara assists me once more, loosening my day gown and helping me into the attire suited for evening. Tonight's dress is of deep green satin, its bodice modest yet flattering, the skirt spreading wide across the floor in carefully measured folds. Around my throat rests a simple string of pearls, a gift from my grandmother, chosen because they speak of refinement without ostentation. When the hour is struck by the tall clock in the hall, we descend as a family. My father leads, his black coat severe against the pale paneling, my mother behind him, her lace sleeves brushing the banister. My younger brother Charles follows last, his expression carrying that air of restless energy common to boys not yet fully pressed into the mold of manhood. The dining room glows with the light of a dozen candles, their flames trembling in the draught as the door is opened by the butler. He bows slightly, his white gloves gleaming against the dark of his livery. Behind him footmen stand ready, their faces calm, their presence nearly invisible. We take our seats according to rank, my father at the head of the table, my mother at the opposite end, Charles to one side, and I upon the other. Napkins are folded precisely, silver forks aligned in perfect order. The servants stand poised to serve, awaiting only the faintest nod from my father. The meal begins with soup, poured in silence. Conversation at the start of dinner is restrained, a few measured remarks upon the events of the day. My father speaks of Parliament, of trade ships arriving at the docks heavy with cargo from the colonies. He mentions railways once more, his voice carrying a note of pride at the empire's expansion. My mother listens attentively, adding the occasional phrase of agreement, her tone soft, never interrupting. When my father addresses me, I lift my eyes but lower my voice. He asks of my impressions of the Crystal Palace, and I answer with careful balance, admiration tempered with modest reserve. It would not do to appear too enthusiastic, for excitement is often mistaken for frivolity in a lady. Yet it would be equally improper to appear indifferent, for that might suggest ingratitude. Every word at table is a careful step along a narrow bridge. Between courses, the servants glide silently, clearing plates, replenishing glasses with claret or water. Their movements are almost balletic, practiced to the point of invisibility. We do not thank them aloud, for such acknowledgment is considered unnecessary. Their service is part of the ritual, expected and assumed. And yet, I cannot help but watch them. How one young footman lowers his eyes each time he approaches, how the butler directs with the slightest inclination of his chin. They carry the weight of our evening, unseen yet essential. The second course arrives. Roasted fowl, with sauces rich and fragrant. Knives and forks move in measured rhythm. No clatter permitted, no haste allowed. My mother corrects Charles gently when he leans too far forward. He reddens and straightens at once. A boy may stumble, but each stumble is swiftly bound by the cords of propriety. As the candles burn lower, conversation widens. My mother speaks of a forthcoming charity bazaar, at which the ladies of our circle will sell small goods to raise funds for the poor. Her voice carries pride in this work, though I sense the quiet irony. The cost of our gowns and jewels far outweighs what is raised at such events. Still, charity, like etiquette, is a cornerstone of respectability, and so it is spoken of with reverence. I offer to assist her at the stall, and she nods approvingly. To show willingness for such duties is expected of me. It displays both piety and modest usefulness. My father smiles faintly, remarking that such service is suitable training for the management of a future household. The words settle upon me like a cloak, gentle yet heavy with implication. Marriage, duty, family, the unspoken path laid before me, as inevitable as the ticking of the clock. Dessert is served, tarts of apple and custard, delicate in their presentation. The sweet scent fills the room, mingling with the wax and wine. Conversation softens, turning toward reminiscences, small stories, gentle laughter measured so as not to disturb the dignity of the hour. At last, the final course concludes. My father lays down his napkin with deliberate calm, the signal that the meal is ended. The butler steps forward, pulling back his chair with a quiet scrape of wood against carpet. One by one we rise. My mother and I withdraw to the drawing room, while my father and Charles remain briefly at the table, as is custom, to share port and more serious talk. In the drawing room the fire crackles softly, its warmth welcome against the evening chill. My mother settles into her chair with her embroidery, the needle flashing gently in the firelight. I seat myself nearby with a book of poetry, though I turn the pages more slowly than I read. The words blur into the rhythm of the room, the faint rustle of silk, the tick of the clock, the distant murmur of voices from the dining room. When at last the gentlemen rejoin us, the hour is late. Lamps are turned down, candles pinched one by one, until shadows lengthen across the room. We offer each other gentle good nights, curtsies and bows performed with quiet grace. And then the house grows still, the servants retreating to their quarters, the halls falling silent, save for the echo of the clock's steady toll. I retire to my chamber, the air cool upon my cheeks as Clara helps me loosen the stays of my corset. My gown is hung with care, my hair unpinned and brushed until it falls loose about my shoulders. In the dim light I watch my reflection once more, the face calm, composed, as it must always be. Yet within me, beyond the pearls and satin, beyond the rules and rituals, a quieter self lingers. She asks what lies beyond these walls, beyond the ceremonies of dinner and drawing room. She wonders if life is meant only to glide so carefully, never stumbling, never straying. The candle flickers low. I draw the covers about me, close my eyes, and let the house settle into silence. Outside, London breathes in its endless rhythm. Inside, we sleep beneath the weight of order, bound by the invisible laces of Victorian life. The evening of the ball arrived with a certain hush of anticipation. From the moment Clara drew my curtains aside that morning, my thoughts had been fixed upon the night ahead. There is a peculiar rhythm to days such as these, when the ordinary patterns of breakfast, correspondence, and quiet reading are all infused with the knowledge that by twilight one will step into a world of brilliance and scrutiny. My gown was laid out hours before the carriage was due. Pale silk, trimmed with lace so delicate it seemed spun from mist, with a sash of deeper hue to give the faintest suggestion of color. Mother insisted that the bodice be modest yet elegant, the neckline lowered just enough to keep fashion's favor without straying into daring. My gloves, ivory reaching past the elbow, waited beside the fan of painted ivory sticks. As Clara arranged my hair, winding and pinning each strand into place with quiet precision, I sat still and thought of the many eyes that would rest upon me. It is said that the ballroom is as much a theatre as any stage in Drury Lane, and each lady who enters is both actress and spectacle. I was no exception. When the carriage wheels at last rattled against the cobbles and we set forth, London itself seemed to shimmer. Gas lamps flickered in rows, the air damp with winter's breath. Carriages crowded the streets near Grosvenor Square, their lanterns glowing like restless fireflies. Footmen hurried, ladies' skirts rustled, gentlemen adjusted their white cravats with practiced ease. The house that hosted the ball blazed with light. From the moment I crossed its threshold, I was enveloped in warmth, in the scent of beeswax and hothouse flowers, in the sound of music that floated down the staircase like a promise. My heart quickened, though my steps remained measured. One must never appear too eager nor too hesitant. Balance is all. The ballroom itself stretched wide beneath a ceiling adorned with painted cherubs. Chandeliers hung like frozen cascades of light, their crystals catching each flicker of flame. Along the polished floor, couples moved in intricate figures, their silks whispering against one another, the gentlemen's boots gleaming black in the glow. My name was announced softly at the door, and I entered at my mother's side. I felt in that instant the weight of countless eyes. Some looked with polite interest, others with calculation. Every newcomer to the ballroom is a new thread in the tapestry of the evening, to be woven or left aside. I was soon approached by a young gentleman of suitable standing. He bowed, and I extended my hand with the faintest of smiles. We joined the quadrille, stepping in time with the music, every movement precise. There is little room for error in such dances, yet even less for too much emotion. A glance too long, a laugh too freely given, and whispers would follow. As the night unfolded, I danced several times, each partner chosen with care by my mother's subtle nods and refusals. Conversation flowed as lightly as the music, comments on the weather, admiration of the decorations, mention of Parliament's debates in the vaguest of terms. Nothing too earnest, nothing too personal. In society, true feelings are tucked away like private letters. Yet amidst the measured words and practiced bows, I felt a quiet stirring of wonder. The music, rising and falling, seemed to lift me beyond the strictures of our world. For a moment, as I turned beneath the chandeliers, I forgot the gaze of others. I felt instead the sheer beauty of the movement, the brightness of the room, the rare enchantment of being alive in that very instant. Supper was served at midnight, and we filed into the adjoining hall, where tables gleamed with silver dishes and crystal glasses. Candles reflected upon polished wood, while servants moved with swift, silent grace. Conversation swelled. Laughter, though always restrained, grew a shade warmer. I tasted syllabub, delicate and sweet, and watched the room with quiet fascination. Here, gathered in one place, were the figures who shaped our city, peers of Parliament, merchants of rising fortune, ladies whose words alone could open or close the doors of half of London. Every smile, every nod was part of a larger game, the constant negotiation of position and reputation. At last, near 2 a.m, we returned to the ballroom for one final waltz. The music swelled, violins soaring like a voice lifted in prayer. I moved in time with my partner, my steps gliding over the polished floor. Around us, the room turned in circles of silk and satin, until the very air seemed woven of color and sound. And then, as the music faded and the bows were exchanged, the spell dissolved. The carriages lined the street once more, their wheels clattering into the quiet night. The air was cool against my cheeks as I stepped outside, the stars faint behind London's haze. Home awaited, with its silence and its watchful eyes. Yet the glow of the ballroom lingered still, not only in the sheen of silk and the memory of music, but in the sense that for one fleeting night I had touched the heart of our age, the splendor, the restraint, the fragile balance upon which it all rested. The morning after the ball arrives not with brightness, but with a hush. My chamber is quiet, the curtains still drawn against the pale light of London. The faint strains of last night's music seem to linger in my ears, though only in memory now. The violins, the steady rhythm of the quadrille, the polite murmur of voices woven between the notes. I lie still for some moments, letting the silence settle. It is always this way after such grand gatherings. The splendor fades, yet its echo clings to the mind. One recalls the sweep of silk across polished floors, the measured bows, the careful laughter, the unspoken glances that mean so much and yet are never confessed aloud. Clara enters softly, her hands folded at her apron. She draws the curtains open, and the day reveals itself. A sky heavy with cloud, the streets damp from last night's rain. London appears subdued, as though the city too has grown weary from its own endless dance. As she helps me dress, Clara remarks gently that the ball was spoken of with great admiration. She heard it from the footman who carried messages late into the night. They said the chandeliers shone like constellations. The supper was splendid, and the young ladies were praised for their beauty and grace. I smile at her words, though I know that in society's eyes, praise is never without its shadow. A lady may be admired, but she must also be guarded, lest admiration turn too swiftly into gossip. When I join my mother at the breakfast table, I find her already reading a letter. Her face is calm, but her eyes carry that subtle sharpness I have come to recognize. She lays the letter aside with measured care. "It was a fine evening," she says, her voice quiet. "Many remarked upon your comportment. You danced the correct number of times, no more, no less. Such balance is vital." I bow my head slightly, accepting her judgment. In our world, one does not simply attend a ball. One performs a delicate calculation. Too few dances, and one appears overlooked. Too many with a single partner, and whispers begin. Every gesture is weighed, every glance recorded in the invisible ledger of society. My father, seated across from us, rustles his newspaper. He speaks of trade and of Parliament, his tone detached from the matters of last night. Yet even he, I suspect, listens to the undercurrent, for reputation is as precious to men as to women, though theirs rests upon honor and influence, while ours rests upon grace and restraint. After breakfast, my mother and I receive visitors for tea. The drawing room is arranged in perfect order, cushions plumped, flowers fresh in their vases, china gleaming upon the tray. To welcome guests is both pleasure and duty, another thread in the endless weaving of connections that sustain our place in society. Mrs. Ellsworth arrives first, her bonnet adorned with ostrich feathers that quiver with each step. She lowers herself onto the settee with a sigh, remarking at once upon the excellence of last night's orchestra. Her words are warm, yet I sense the subtle searching beneath them, as though she weighs every detail of our conduct against her own ledger of propriety. Others follow, Miss Harding bright-eyed and eager, Lady Markham reserved and dignified, two gentlemen of my father's acquaintance who bow stiffly and seat themselves with formality. The room fills with the murmur of conversation, each voice soft yet deliberate. The talk turns inevitably to the ball, the gowns admired, the dances noted, the small triumphs and discreet missteps recounted with careful discretion. I hear my own name mentioned once or twice, always with approval, and feel the faint warmth of relief. Approval is fragile, a blossom easily bruised. One misstep, one careless laugh could undo it. As the tea is poured, I find myself observing the rituals more than partaking in them. The way each cup is lifted with the same gentle precision, the way each spoon rests at the same angle upon its saucer. The smallest details become symbols of order, reassurance that the fabric of our world holds firm. And yet, beneath the surface, I feel the quiet strain. We are bound not only by etiquette but by vigilance. To live in society is to live in the gaze of others, forever watched, forever measured. Even our leisure carries the weight of duty. Later, when the guests depart and the room is once more our own, I linger by the window. Outside, the street is alive with humbler voices. Costermongers calling their wares, children chasing one another across the cobbles, servants hurrying on errands. Their world is harsher, freer, untouched by the silken cords that bind mine. I wonder, not for the first time, which life is truly heavier. Theirs, filled with labor yet free of constant judgment, or ours, cushioned with comfort yet forever under the eye of society. As the day wanes, I retreat to my chamber once more. The house grows still, the fire burns low, and I sit with pen and paper, recording my thoughts as softly as one might whisper a prayer. It is here, in these quiet moments, that I feel most myself, unwatched, unmeasured, unbound, if only for the length of a page. And so the evening closes, not with music or with laughter, but with silence. The silence of a house that holds within its walls both splendor and constraint, both comfort and confinement. Sunday dawns more softly than the other days. There is no rush of horses in the street, no hammer of tradesmen upon their doors. London itself seems hushed, as though the very stones remember the sanctity of the Sabbath. Clara draws my curtains early, her steps hushed upon the carpet. She lays out a gown of sober silk, darker than the colors of a ball or a drawing-room visit. My gloves, too, are plain, and my bonnet trimmed not with daring feathers, but with simple ribbon. There is a reverence to these garments, as though each stitch were stitched with humility. Mother enters to inspect me before we depart. She nods approvingly, for she knows as well as I that one's appearance at church is as carefully observed as one's manner at the ballroom. To be devout is not only to pray, but to be seen praying. Piety and reputation walk hand in hand. The carriage wheels rattle gently over damp stones as we make our way toward St. George's, Hanover Square. The air is cool, and the bells ring out in measured tones, summoning the faithful from all corners of the city. Their sound carries across the rooftops, solemn and insistent, as though the heavens themselves called us to order. When we arrive, the square is already alive with figures moving toward the church doors. Ladies in dark gowns walk with measured grace, their gloved hands resting upon the arms of husbands or brothers. Children, dressed in miniature finery, glance about with wide eyes, hushed quickly by a parent's firm whisper. Servants linger at the edges, their duty being to see their employers safely inside. The great doors of the church swing open, releasing a faint draught of candle smoke and polish. Inside, the air is cooler, touched with the fragrance of beeswax. Sunlight filters through stained glass, painting the flagstones in soft hues of crimson and blue. The organ's first notes tremble through the nave, solemn as the breath of the earth itself. We take our places in the family pew, each movement measured and precise. Mother bows her head, her lips moving in a prayer so soft it is almost indistinguishable from silence. Father sits upright, his gaze steady, his hands folded upon his cane. I, too, lower my head, though my thoughts wander between devotion and observation. Around us, the congregation settles into stillness. I notice the rustle of skirts as ladies arrange themselves, the quiet cough of an elderly gentleman behind us, the faint creak of polished wood beneath shifting weight. Yet above all these murmurs rises the voice of the vicar, deep and deliberate, carrying the weight of both scripture and expectation. His sermon speaks of duty, duty to God, duty to family, duty to society. He reminds us that industry and virtue are twinned, that idleness invites sin, and that obedience to the laws of heaven must be mirrored by obedience to the laws of the land. I listen, letting his words flow through me like a river, steady, inescapable, shaping the course of our lives as surely as stone shapes water's path. There is comfort in his cadence, and yet a quiet unease, too. For beneath his words lies the reminder that to falter is to fall not only in the eyes of God, but in the gaze of all who surround us. Religion in our world is not a matter of private soul alone. It is the scaffold upon which society itself is built. To be seen in church, to bow one's head, to live outwardly within the bounds of virtue, this is as vital as any confession whispered in solitude. The hymns swell, voices rising together until the very rafters seem to tremble. I join my own voice soft, scarcely more than a breath, yet carried along by the multitude. In that moment, I feel both the strength and the weight of belonging, 1,000 souls bound together by words and melody, each one surrendering to something greater, each one watched and watching in turn. When the service concludes, the congregation spills once more into the daylight. The bells toll again, brighter now, as though in celebration of our obedience. On the church steps, greetings are exchanged with careful warmth. Compliments are offered upon appearances, inquiries made after health, subtle notes of approval or disapproval passed in the arch of an eyebrow or the softness of a smile. We take our place among them, for to leave too hastily would suggest aloofness, while to linger overlong might hint at eagerness. Conversation flows around us like the tide, and then at last recedes as we return to our carriage. The ride home is quieter still. Father reads once more from his newspaper, though his eyes seem distant. Mother sits beside me, her hands folded in her lap, serene in the knowledge that another Sunday has been fulfilled with propriety. And I, gazing out at the city, wonder at the invisible web that binds us all. For religion in our world is not only a matter of faith. It is the rhythm of our weeks, the measure of our behavior, the unseen thread that ties reputation to righteousness. To walk within its bounds is to remain secure. To stray, even by a step, is to risk not only heaven's judgment, but society's unrelenting gaze. And so the Sabbath closes with its own quiet gravity, its rituals completed, its lessons absorbed. The lamps will burn again tonight. The streets will fill tomorrow with their restless noise, yet beneath it all lies the steady pulse of reverence, soft, insistent, unyielding, as constant as the tolling of the bells. The morning after Sunday feels heavier than most. The calm of the Sabbath lingers faintly, yet London quickly reclaims its restless rhythm. Carts clattering along the cobbles, vendors calling their wares, children darting like shadows between carriages. I sit at the breakfast table, listening to the steady thrum of the city beyond the windows, and sense that the stillness of yesterday has already dissolved. Mother announces that we are to attend a meeting of the Ladies' Benevolent Society. The decision, though spoken lightly, carries the weight of duty. Among our circle, charity is as much an expectation as attendance at church. To neglect it would be to court whispers of coldness or neglect. Clara dresses me in a gown of muted grey, plain enough to suggest humility, yet trimmed carefully enough that our family's position is not diminished. I know that such choices matter. Even in charity, appearance must strike the perfect balance. Compassion without ostentation, piety without pretense. Our carriage carries us eastward, away from the polished squares and orderly crescents of Mayfair, into streets where grandeur fades. The air grows denser with coal smoke, the buildings closer, their bricks blackened, their windows dim. Children huddle at corners, their faces pale, their clothing threadbare. A woman carries water in a pail nearly too heavy for her thin frame. The cries of vendors mingle with the rasp of saws and the clang of iron, each sound a harsh counterpoint to the measured quiet of our own world. At last we arrive at a modest hall where the ladies' society gathers. Inside, the air smells faintly of ink and damp plaster. Long tables are set with piles of folded garments, jars of medicine, and baskets of bread. Other ladies are already assembled, their gowns dark, their bonnets tied neatly beneath their chins. They murmur greetings, then turn quickly to their tasks, for efficiency is itself a virtue. We spend the morning distributing parcels, taking notes of names and conditions, offering words of gentle counsel. I hand a loaf of bread to a woman whose hands tremble with exhaustion. She curtsies low, though her eyes never quite meet mine. Another brings forward a child, coughing with a hollow sound that seems to shake his small frame. One of the ladies places a vial of syrup into her hand, instructing her in soft tones, though we all know how little such remedies can do. I watch, I smile, I speak the words expected of me, yet inside I feel a stirring of unease. The faces before me are not merely shadows of misfortune. They are lives, pressed hard against the weight of the city, and yet once they leave the hall, they vanish again from sight, as though swallowed whole by London's endless appetite. When our duties conclude, we step back into the daylight. Mother remarks upon the importance of such work, her voice calm, her expression composed. I nod, for I know she is right. Yet as the carriage carries us westward once more, I look from the window and see the gulf between our world and theirs. We pass through narrow lanes where washing hangs limp between windows, where barefoot children sit upon doorsteps, where men gather in groups, their faces lined with labor and fatigue. The smell of refuse clings to the air, sharp and unrelenting. Here, London is not marble and gaslight, but brick and soot and endless striving. And then, almost imperceptibly, the streets widen. The houses grow taller, their windows polished, their steps scrubbed clean. By the time we return to Mayfair, the city has once again clothed itself in refinement. The lamps gleam, the carriages roll smoothly, the shops display their wares behind shining glass. It is as though the other London never existed at all. That evening I sit by the fire in our drawing room, my needle poised above a length of embroidery. The room is warm, the air faintly scented with roses, the hush broken only by the crackle of the hearth. Yet my thoughts drift eastward to the narrow streets and the hollow cough of a child. I wonder whether our charity is enough, whether loaves and blankets, however kindly given, can truly mend what the city itself seems determined to break. And I wonder, too, what becomes of those unseen, uncounted souls who pass through life without ever crossing the threshold of a grand hall or a shining carriage. For in London, splendor and shadow are but two sides of the same coin. One cannot walk in the glow of the lamps without knowing that darkness presses close beyond their circle of light. And though we live within walls of comfort, we cannot wholly close our eyes to the world that breathes just beyond them. I close my needlework, fold it carefully upon my lap, and let the fire's warmth seep into me. Yet even as the flames dance, I feel the weight of the city pressing in, vast and unrelenting, reminding me that beyond our polished glass, London continues, its laughter, its hunger, its ceaseless, restless life. Books have always carried a strange power for me, even as a child. Before I fully understood their meaning, I would run my fingers across their spines, tracing the gilded letters, listening to the faint creak of leather as the covers opened. To me, they were not mere objects but portals, silent doors that could open into distant worlds. In our house, books are everywhere, stacked neatly upon shelves, placed with care upon tables, even displayed like ornaments in the drawing room, their bindings chosen as much for beauty as for content. Father's study holds the greater share, volumes of history, law, and science, their titles heavy with knowledge. Mother's shelves are lighter, works of poetry, collections of sermons, and a small number of carefully chosen novels. Yet, for myself, I find my heart most often drawn to the circulating library, where shelves stretch wide with volumes new and old, their pages scented faintly of ink and dust. On this particular morning, Mother grants me permission to call upon Muddy's library, a place well known among ladies of our circle. Clara accompanies me, her steps quiet behind my own, as we walk through the gaslit streets. The library itself stands with modest dignity, its windows shaded, its door polished smooth by countless hands. Within, the air is hushed, filled with the soft rustle of pages and the faint tap of boots upon wooden floors. Shelves rise like solemn sentinels, each holding rows upon rows of volumes, their spines gleaming faintly in the light. I wander among them slowly, letting my eyes linger on each title. Here are the works of Mr. Dickens, his stories filled with bustling streets and hidden sorrows. There the novels of Miss Bronte, her words carrying the breath of wild moors and fierce longing. I pass shelves of travelogues, of sermons, of scientific treatises that whisper of discoveries unfolding in our very age. The librarian, a solemn man with spectacles perched low upon his nose, greets me with a bow and records my selections in his ledger. The library is as much a guardian of propriety as of knowledge. It ensures that ladies read what is deemed suitable, that the boundaries of curiosity remain within acceptable lines. As I choose my volumes, I think of the quiet debate that hums beneath our society. Some say that women should read only lightly, poetry, devotion, perhaps the gentler novels. Too much knowledge, they warn, might unsettle a lady, might draw her beyond the sphere of home and hearth. Yet others argue that education is a duty as well as a pleasure, that an informed mind strengthens not only the woman, but the family she guides. I feel these questions stir within me as I cradle the books in my arms. To read is, in some sense, to step beyond the narrow bounds of our daily world. Within the pages of a novel, one may walk through crowded alleys or wander windswept fields. Within a volume of science, one may peer at the stars or into the very fabric of life. Knowledge carries its own kind of freedom, quiet yet profound. When I return home, the afternoon is already fading into twilight. I retreat to the small alcove beside my chamber, where a window looks out upon the square. There I open my chosen book and let the words spill across my mind like a soft tide. The world around me falls away, the ticking of the clock, the faint sounds of carriages outside, the low murmur of voices below stairs. Only the page remains, and the voice of the author whispering across time. As I read, I think too of those who cannot. In the east of the city, where we visited with the Benevolent Society, books are a luxury few can afford. Children labor before they learn their letters. Men and women toil without time for reading. Knowledge, like comfort, is not evenly spread across London. It pools in some places, starves in others. Yet here, within my hands, I hold it freely. And though society may guard its limits, though it may raise an eyebrow at a lady who reads too widely, I cannot help but feel that in these quiet moments, with a page beneath my fingers, I glimpse a kind of truth, one that belongs not to class or station, but to the very heart of being human. When at last I close the book, the lamps are lit, and the fire glows gently against the hearth. I rest the volume upon my lap and breathe in the stillness it leaves behind. To read is to journey, yet also to return changed, even if only by a breath. And so I end the day with a sense of calm, the whisper of words still echoing within me. In a world governed by appearances, by duty, by the ever-watchful eyes of society, it is within books that I find the one place where thought may move unobserved, where imagination may wander freely, where the soul may, if only for a time, belong to itself. Illness is never a welcome guest, yet in Victorian London it lingers like a shadow, moving quietly through homes and streets. Even in our household, where care is taken and comfort is secured, we cannot help but feel its presence. The city itself, with its smoke-choked air and crowded lanes, seems always to carry whispers of fever, of coughs that linger, of chills that do not easily pass. One November morning, when the fog lay heavy over the square, I awoke to a sore throat and a weight upon my chest. The fire had burned low in the grate, the air damp with cold. Clara, ever attentive, brought me a shawl and pressed her hand gently to my forehead. "Not fever, I think," she whispered, though I could see the concern in her eyes. Mother, upon hearing of my discomfort, insisted that Dr. Pembroke be summoned. He has been our family physician for many years, a man of solemn countenance and gentle manners. When he arrived, his cane tapping softly upon the floorboards, he carried with him the faint scent of camphor and leather. His bag, worn but well kept, held the instruments of his art: thermometers, stethoscopes, vials of powders and tinctures. He listened patiently as Mother described my symptoms, then placed his cool hand upon my wrist, counting the pulse with quiet precision. His stethoscope, a curious wooden tube, he held against my chest, tilting his head as though to catch the faintest whisper within. At last, he declared it a mild chill, nothing grave, though rest and warm broth would be required. I lay upon the chaise in the drawing-room, wrapped in blankets, while Clara read softly from a book of prayers. Mother busied herself with preparations of barley water, while Father stood at the window, frowning into the fog, as though illness itself might be discerned upon the street. For in truth, sickness is feared not only for its discomfort, but for its danger. Typhoid, cholera, influenza. These names move through conversation like shadows, reminders of how fragile the body remains even in an age of progress. Our household is fortunate. We have clean water carried in daily, fresh linen laundered with care, and servants who watch over every detail of the house. Yet I know well that beyond our square, conditions differ. In the East End, drains overflow, alleys run with refuse, and whole families crowd into single rooms. There, illness spreads swiftly, and the physician's visit is a luxury few can afford. I think of this often, especially when I read the reports in the Times, articles urging reform, demanding that the city take greater care of its people. Some argue that disease arises from foul air, the miasmas that rise from unclean places. Others begin to speak of unseen organisms, of contagion carried not by vapor but by touch and water. It is a debate of science, yet it touches every household, every breath. As I drift in and out of rest, I remember the stories told by my grandmother of her own youth, when remedies were simpler: herbs steeped in hot water, mustard plasters laid upon the chest, leeches applied with solemn faith. Some of these remain in practice still, though alongside them grow new methods, born of laboratories and microscopes. Ours is a century of change, even in medicine. By evening I feel improved, though weak. The fire crackles warmly, and Clara brings a small tray with broth, its steam rising in gentle curls. I sip it slowly, each mouthful soothing, and listen to the quiet hum of the household. Illness, though unwelcome, carries with it a curious kind of stillness. It slows the day, turns the mind inward, and makes one mindful of each small act of care. A hand upon the brow, a whispered word, the soft closing of a door. The following morning, Dr. Pembroke returns, his face composed but kindly. He nods in approval at my recovery and prescribes only further rest. Before he departs, he speaks with Father in low tones, reminding him of the importance of fresh air, of exercise, of moderation in all things. Health, he says, is not merely the absence of illness, but the balance of body and spirit. As I sit once more by the window, gazing at the pale light of day upon the square, I reflect upon his words. In our age, much is governed by rules, of society, of propriety, of conduct. Yet beneath them all lies a deeper rule, the fragile law of the body itself. We may dress in silks, dine in elegance, speak with refinement, but we are all, in the end, bound by breath, by pulse, by the quiet rhythm of life within. And so I breathe deeply, letting the cool air fill my lungs, grateful for the small mercies of recovery. In this city of contrasts, of splendor and squalor, of learning and ignorance, of health and sickness, it is a blessing to find oneself, if only for a moment, whole. Life within a London household is like a clock. The face we show to the world is polished and graceful, yet beneath it countless wheels and cogs turn quietly to keep everything in motion. So it is with our home. From the moment the lamps are lit in the morning until the last fire is banked at night, the rhythm of our days is carried upon the shoulders of those who serve. I am often reminded of this truth when I rise early. If I step softly into the corridor before breakfast, I may hear the faint rustle of skirts and the quick tapping of boots upon stone as the servants begin their day. The housemaid Mary sweeps the stairway with practiced motions, her brush whispering over each step. In the kitchen below, the cook stirs the morning fire, coaxing the coals to life with patient breath. The scullery maid, little more than a girl, bends over the sink, her hands red with cold water as she scrubs the heavy pans. To us above stairs, life appears smooth, as though comfort arrives without effort. Yet below stairs, life is a constant labor, each moment shaped by duty. Servants rise before dawn, sleep long after midnight, and give their hours to tasks that must be invisible, seamless, and perfectly timed. Clara, though she is my lady's maid and thus shares a place of privilege among the household staff, tells me often of the hierarchy that rules below. The butler stands at the summit, managing the wine cellar and the dignity of the household alike. The housekeeper, with keys that jingle softly at her waist, commands the female servants and ensures every detail is observed. Beneath them are the footmen, the maids, the cooks, each in their own order, each bound by rules as strict as those that govern us above. There is dignity in their service, but also hardship. I see it sometimes in Mary's weary eyes, or in the stiffness of the scullery maid's back as she carries coal upstairs. The city offers few opportunities for girls of their station. Service provides shelter, food, and clothing, but it demands in return not only labor, but silence, discretion, and invisibility. And yet, there is also life below stairs, as real and vivid as our own. In the evenings, when their work is done, they gather in the servants' hall, voices rising in quiet laughter. stories shared in the dim light of lamps. I imagine the warmth of their fellowship, the comfort of being among one's own, free for a brief hour from the strict lines of duty. Clara has described these moments to me. Bread shared, small songs hummed, jokes whispered that would never pass our drawing-room door. Sometimes, when I watch Clara sew a ribbon into my gown or brush out my hair at night, I wonder at the distance society places between us. She knows my secrets, my moods, my smallest preferences, yet by custom she remains apart, her life tethered to mine, but never truly equal. I feel affection for her, gratitude, even friendship, but the lines drawn by birth and class are not easily crossed. They are woven into the very fabric of Victorian life, as firm as the threads of my gown. On rare occasions, our paths converge more closely. During illnesses like my recent chill, Clara remained at my side with tireless care, reading softly, bringing tea, adjusting pillows. In those hours, the world above and below seemed to blend, bound by the simple act of kindness. Yet when I grew well again, the usual boundaries returned, quiet and unspoken. London itself mirrors this duality. In grand houses across the city, ladies and gentlemen dine upon polished silver, while beneath them, in kitchens and attics, servants move unseen, shaping the very elegance displayed above. One cannot exist without the other, and yet society insists upon separation, as though the two worlds must never truly meet. When I consider it, I feel both gratitude and unease. Gratitude for the comfort their labor affords us. Unease for the sacrifices hidden behind that comfort. The hours of toil, the weariness carried silently, the lives lived in shadow so that ours may shine in light. As evening settles over the square, I hear the muffled clatter of pans below, the hum of voices as supper is prepared. The lamps are lit upstairs, and Father gathers his papers while Mother arranges flowers upon the table. All is calm, orderly, serene. Yet I know that beneath our feet, life stirs just as strongly, though in a different key. In truth, a household is not unlike a great organ. Above, the melody played with grace and dignity. Below, the hidden pipes and bellows that give it breath. Both are needed, both essential. And though the music is heard only in the drawing room, it is carried upon the unseen labor of many hands, many voices, below stairs. In Victorian London, one speaks not only with words, but with fabrics, ribbons, and lace. A gown may convey more than a letter, a hat more than a phrase. To step into society is to enter a conversation written in silk and stitched with propriety. And so each morning when Clara opens the wardrobe doors, it feels less like a choice of clothing and more like a ritual. A silent dialogue between myself and the world outside. The garments are many, each suited to its proper hour and occasion. Morning gowns, plain yet elegant, to be worn within the home or upon quiet errands. Afternoon dresses of richer fabric and careful trim, ready for callers or for a stroll through the square. Evening gowns, delicate as moonlight, their skirts wide and gleaming, reserved for gatherings where chandeliers burn and eyes observe with keen attention. Each sleeve, each button carries meaning. Beneath it all lies the corset. To some it is an instrument of beauty, to others a cage. When Clara laces it about me, her fingers pulling with steady rhythm, I feel both supported and restrained, lifted into a shape not my own yet expected by all. My breath shortens, my waist narrows, my posture straightens. In the looking glass I appear composed, elegant, every line in harmony with fashion's decree. Yet beneath the silk, the body remembers the pressure, the quiet ache that lingers long after the laces are loosened. Still, I do not resist, for in our world a lady's appearance is her calling card, her shield, her duty. To be well dressed is to show respect not only for oneself, but for society. To be careless in attire is to invite judgment, whispers, perhaps even exclusion. Fashion is not merely ornament, it is conduct made visible. On this particular day, I prepare for an afternoon call upon a neighbor. Clara selects a gown of soft gray silk, trimmed with narrow bands of velvet. She arranges my hair with care, smoothing each strand into its proper place before settling a small bonnet upon my head. Gloves are drawn upon my hands, their buttons fastened one by one. At last, I take up my parasol, the final note in the composition. When I step into the street, I feel at once both myself and not myself. The fabric moves with me, the corset holds me, the bonnet shades me. I am dressed not merely as a woman, but as a message, a statement of station, of respectability, of belonging. Others glance as they pass, their eyes taking in the lines and colors, reading silently the language we all understand. Yet beneath the surface lies a paradox. These gowns, though beautiful, are seldom comfortable. Their weight pulls upon the shoulders, their breadth demands space. To sit, to walk, even to breathe is shaped by the garments one wears. A lady is expected to glide, to move with grace, yet every step is choreographed by seams and stays. There is freedom in appearance, but constraint in reality. I think often of those beyond our circle who dress not for fashion but for necessity. The laundress with sleeves rolled to the elbow, the flower seller with skirts worn thin, the seamstress hunched late into the night over her needle. Their clothing speaks too, not of elegance but of endurance, of work pressed into every thread. In a city like London, fashion is both a bridge and a barrier, a symbol of unity within class and division across it. And yet I cannot deny the beauty of it. When I see Mother enter the drawing room in her evening gown, the light catching upon her pearls, I feel the poetry of fabric, the way it transforms an ordinary moment into ceremony. When I fasten a ribbon at my throat, I sense the quiet thrill of being seen, of expressing something unspoken through color and form. Clothing is not merely a covering, it is a kind of art, an art lived every day. As twilight falls, Clara loosens the laces of my corset, her hands gentle as the pressure fades. I breathe deeply, filling my lungs with air unconfined, and let the gown slip away. In its place, I don a simple dressing gown, soft and flowing, free of rules. The contrast is striking. How light the fabric feels, how natural the movement, how close it is to simply being. I sit before the fire, the day's attire folded neatly aside, and I think of the curious balance that governs our lives. Clothing both adorns and binds, elevates and restrains. It speaks with eloquence, yet often silences the body beneath. And so we live within its language, shaping ourselves daily to the grammar of fashion, never forgetting that in Victorian society, to dress is not merely to exist, but to declare who we are and who we are permitted to be. London by day is a city of duty. Men hurrying to offices, carriages rattling over cobblestones, women stepping briskly on errands. But by evening, when lamps are lit and gas lights glow along the streets, another face of the city awakens, a face of leisure, of music, of shared delight. On such evenings, our family often seeks the solace of art. Sometimes we attend the theater, where velvet curtains rise like dawn upon painted scenery. Other times we go to the concert hall, where the first hush of expectation falls over the audience like a soft cloak. And sometimes we gather in smaller salons, where friends and neighbors share music in the intimacy of candlelight. Each form, whether grand or humble, carries the same promise. that for a few hours life may be transformed into beauty. One evening stands out in my memory, a night when we attended the Italian Opera at Covent Garden. The very journey there felt like a procession. Our carriage rolled slowly among others, wheels glistening under lamplight, ladies stepping carefully onto the pavement in gowns that shimmered like moonlit water. Gentlemen in their black coats and white cravats offered arms with practiced grace. The very air seemed touched with anticipation, as though all of London breathed in unison. Inside, the theatre was a temple of light. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above. Gilded balconies curved like garlands around the hall. The murmur of voices filled the air until the conductor raised his hand. Then silence fell, deep and expectant, broken only by the first swell of strings. I remember how the music unfurled, soft at first, then rising, carrying us upon a tide of sound. The singer's voice soared, pure and trembling, each note drawn from the heart and cast into the air as though eternal. I sat in stillness, hardly daring to breathe, as the orchestra painted landscapes with sound, forests and storms, sorrow and triumph. For a time I was no longer seated in London, but adrift in a world woven of melody. Around me I saw the faces of others transformed. Some leaned forward, eyes alight. Others closed their eyes, lost in inward reverie. Even father, usually reserved, tapped his fingers softly upon his cane in rhythm. Mother's hand rested lightly on her lap, her expression serene. We were together, yet each alone, each carried upon our own private stream of music. When the final note faded, silence lingered for a breath before applause broke forth like rain. Hands clapped, voices called out, and the singer bowed with grace. Yet in my heart it was the silence that remained, the silence between sound and response, the fragile moment when music still lived in the air, unbroken. Not all evenings are so grand. Sometimes we attend gatherings in the drawing rooms of friends, where a young lady plays the pianoforte, while others listen with folded hands. The notes, though less polished than in the opera house, feel no less sincere. In the quiet intimacy of a salon, one hears not perfection, but presence, the tremble of fingers upon keys, the courage of a voice lifted among friends. At times, even within our own home, we gather for music. Father reads aloud by the fire, mother embroiders in the lamplight, and I play gentle airs upon the pianoforte. The melodies are simple, but they carry a comfort no grandeur can equal. For art, whether in splendor or in simplicity, reminds us of what is most human, the longing for beauty, for connection, for something that endures beyond the day's labors. London offers many amusements, the theatre with its dramas, the galleries with their canvases, the pleasure gardens where lanterns glow and music drifts beneath the trees. Yet beneath them all lies the same truth, that life, in all its demands and duties, finds balance in delight. Without moments of laughter, of melody, of shared wonder, society would feel as rigid as a corset drawn too tight. As I lay aside my gloves at the close of that opera evening, the music still echoed within me, soft and insistent. Even as I removed the heavy gown, loosened the corset, and sat in the quiet of my chamber, the melodies lingered like whispers weaving themselves into my dreams. And I thought then, as I do now, that art is not merely entertainment. It is a kind of sustenance, as vital as bread, as necessary as breath. In a city of industry, of rules, of unyielding propriety, art reminds us that we are more than machines of duty. We are souls that seek beauty, hearts that hunger for song, beings that, in the stillness of evening, may rise with the swell of music and remember what it means to feel alive. Each morning in our household begins not only with tea and bread, but with the unfolding of the newspaper. Father receives the Times, its pages broad and crisp, smelling faintly of ink. The rustle of paper is as much a part of breakfast as the clink of porcelain cups. He reads with great attention, his brow furrowing, his lips pursing at certain reports. For in our age, the printed word is a kind of daily sermon, shaping opinion, carrying the voice of Parliament into every home. Sometimes he reads aloud. News of debates within the House of Commons, of reforms proposed, of voices raised in earnest quarrel. Words like franchise, reform, and progress drift across the table, weighted with meaning. I do not always grasp their full significance, yet I feel their gravity, like distant thunder rolling across the horizon. Politics may seem far removed from the drawing room, yet its currents shape the world in which we live. I think often of the Reform Acts, spoken of with both hope and caution. To grant more men the right to vote is, some say, to give strength to the nation. Others fear it will open the door to disorder, to voices untrained in governance. Women, of course, remain excluded from these discussions, our presence invisible, our voices unheard. And yet, as I listen to Father read, I cannot help but wonder, if knowledge and virtue are not confined to men, why should political power be? Beyond politics, the city itself speaks with its own eloquence, through stone, iron, and glass. London is a parliament of architecture, each building a kind of speech. The Gothic spires of the newly rebuilt Palace of Westminster rise above the river like solemn fingers pointing heavenward. Their intricate carvings are testimony to tradition. By contrast, the great glass vault of the Crystal Palace, constructed for the exhibition, gleams with modern confidence, a cathedral of industry and light. When I walk through the city, I feel this dialogue around me. St. Paul's Cathedral, dome serene against the sky, whispers of faith and endurance. The new railway stations, vast with iron arches, roar with energy, proclaiming that the age of steam has arrived. Row upon row of terraced houses, built in brick, tell of families seeking order and respectability. The city grows daily, expanding outward, reshaping itself like clay beneath unseen hands. And yet, amid all this grandeur, I notice the contrasts. Beside polished squares stand narrow alleys, their windows cracked, their walls stained with soot. The grandeur of Parliament debates reform, while children in rags sell matches in the rain. Architecture is more than stone. It is the face of society itself, revealing both pride and neglect, vision and blindness. One evening, Father took me to Westminster to observe from the gallery, where visitors may listen to the debates below. The chamber was lit by gas lamps, their light glowing against carved wood and green benches. Voices rose and fell, some sharp, some weary, each carrying the weight of conviction. I felt the air tremble with words, as though speech itself were another kind of architecture, building invisible structures of law and policy. Later, as we stepped outside, the great clock tower loomed above us, its face glowing pale against the night. The sound of its chimes rolled across the city, deep and resonant. Around us, the river reflected the lights of bridges and embankments, while beyond, the spires and rooftops of London stretched into shadow. Walking homeward, I thought of how city and society mirror one another. Just as Parliament debates the laws that shape our lives, so buildings rise to embody the spirit of the age. Stone and iron, words and ideas, they are not separate, but entwined, each reinforcing the other. A law may alter the life of a family, A building may alter the life of a street. Both are expressions of what we believe, of what we hope, of what we fear. And I, moving quietly between drawing room and street, between newsprint and stone, feel myself a small part of this vast conversation. I cannot yet raise my voice in Parliament. I cannot yet place a vote upon the roll. But I can walk through my city, read its walls, listen to its words, and carry within me a sense of belonging to an age of change. An age written not only in ink and speech, but in brick, glass, and towering spires that reach toward the sky. The days of my life seem to pass now with a gentler rhythm, as though time itself has grown thoughtful, pausing to let me notice its passage. When I look back upon the years of this reign, I see not only the sweep of history, but the small, tender patterns of daily existence that give it shape. The soft clatter of teaspoons in their saucers, the rustle of silk skirts upon polished floors, the hush of voices in church pews, the glow of gaslight reflected in a child's eyes. These, too, are the substance of an age. London has grown around me like a living creature. Streets I once knew as quiet have filled with the rattle of omnibuses, the shrill cry of street sellers, the hissing breath of engines. Chimneys rise like forests of stone, their smoke drifting skyward in grey veils. Yet amidst all this noise, I find moments of stillness. A garden blooming stubbornly in a soot-darkened square, a lamplighter pausing at twilight to kindle his flame, the sudden hush of snow falling upon rooftops. The city, vast and restless, yet holds its pockets of peace. I think often of the Queen herself, whose reign has spanned so many seasons of our nation. She is both distant and familiar, her image upon coins, her presence in every speech and ceremony. Her widowhood, carried like a mantle of sorrow, seems to mirror our own sense of gravity. And yet under her rule we have built railways that cross the land, telegraphs that carry words faster than wind, ships that bind continents together. We live in a world where distances shrink, where the unseen becomes suddenly present. Still, progress does not silence longing. I walk sometimes by the Thames, watching the lights of bridges shimmer upon the water, and I wonder what lies ahead. Will the future remember us kindly? Will our great buildings, our solemn laws, our elaborate manners endure, or will they fade like mist when the sun rises higher? Perhaps every age believes itself the most important. Yet in truth, we are but one chapter in a book whose ending none of us may read. Within the hush of my own chamber, I hold on to smaller certainties. The scent of lavender tucked between linens, the comfort of a familiar hymn sung softly at dusk, the laughter of children playing in the street below, unaware of the weight of history that hovers above them. These are my anchors, the threads that bind me to the present, even as the world rushes forward with astonishing speed. I imagine sometimes that centuries from now others will walk these same streets. They will see Westminster standing proud, St. Paul's dome serene against the skyline, perhaps even hear echoes of the cries of sellers, the wheels upon cobblestones, the tolling of bells. They will know us not as individuals, but as an age, a Victorian whisper carried across time. And what is that whisper? It is restraint and also yearning. It is the discipline of rules and the restless beating of hearts that wished for more. It is lace gloves and soot-stained hands, gilded halls and crowded tenements, earnest reformers and silent sufferers. Above all, it is a testament to endurance, the way life persists amid change, the way humanity finds its voice even when muted by convention. As I lay down my pen tonight, The lamp beside me flickers, casting its warm circle of light upon the page. Beyond the window, the city hums with life, a vast symphony of voices and footsteps and dreams. I close my eyes, and it seems to me that London itself is breathing, slow and steady, like a great heart that will beat long after I am gone. And so I leave this record, not as a grand history, nor as a proclamation, but as a gentle murmur from one life within many. For though the age may one day pass into memory, its spirit lingers in every stone, every story, every quiet breath taken within its shadow. The Victorian era is not only what we have built, or what we have written, or what we have ruled. It is also what we have felt, in silence and in speech, in sorrow and in hope. And if I am but a whisper within it, then let it be a whisper of calm, of reflection, of gratitude. For in the stillness of the night, with the lamp burning low and the city beyond my window, I believe I can hear it, the gentle echo of tomorrow,